uh, overall wage costs for the business. So that's not reducing, individuals' income. It's saying how can we get by with fewer employees? How can we do more with less? Because if your total sales are down, you have to react somewhere. And the co-op has done really a tremendous job at pulling that wage cost down. What that means is that individual staff members are doing more, and that can be a challenge. You can only go so far there. But I'll give you some numbers. Year to date, from January to the end of July, this year we sold $590,000 worth of product as compared to last year, same time period, $620,000. So that's a 4.7% decline in sales year to date. Cost of goods, declined in part because, we're selling fewer things, but also, there are choices that staff make in terms of what items they carry and what they don't carry. Cost of goods was actually down 11%, meaning that our gross profit was actually up. Gross profit year to date $202,000 as compared to $184,000. So that leaves us with year to date for 2023 net profit of negative $6,000. We've lost about $6,000 year to date, compared to year to date at this time last year having lost $67,000. That's a major improvement, and a positive trend. Okay, and just to give you a sense of how this works, monthly profits. January, we lost $14,000. February, we made a profit of about $700. March, profit of $900. April, we lost $3,000. May, we lost $4,000. June, a profit of $9,000. July, a profit of about $5,000. So, there's some swings up and down, but we are doing much better than we were at this time last year. I mentioned accounts payable as sort of the biggest debt that we have. Accounts payable today, $84,000. The 62% of that are still considered current, so meaning it's been 30 days or less since we've received those bills. Generally, so that leaves 38% of those being overdue, which is not ideal. But if we compare that to sort of probably the point where we're at our worst, with the end of December this last year, accounts payable were $109,000, 58% being within 35 days and 42% being overdue. So we've made considerable progress there. And what I'll leave with here is what I'm seeing is the biggest financial challenges that the co-op is facing. Number one is this issue of declining annual sales, and we can talk about various causes of that. Number two is limited cash reserves. We simply don't have a lot of money if any major issues come up. We do have a reserve fund that has money in it, but cash flow, kind of people in the business world talk about cash as oxygen. Cash gives you the ability to do the things that you need to do, and so we have limited cash reserves. Our wage costs tend to be high as a percentage of sales for a retail business of our size. And that really, as you grow, often that wage cost goes down as a percentage of your total sales. We've been forced to have a lack of investment in the business, meaning deferred maintenance of building, equipment, and infrastructure. It also means lack of investment in the people that run the business in terms of training, professional development. And then the final thing I'll leave us with is that all the discussions that we're having today, there is this looming issue about the bridge closure in the village, which now is proposed for 2028. We do know that there's a financial impact of when that bridge closed, for a shorter period of time with that first round of maintenance. And this is proposed to be closed for a number of months. And there is concern that given our limited cash reserves, that could be sort of a make or break point for the business if we don't adapt in the meantime. Those are things we're going to be talking about for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, John. It's wonderful to have a treasurer's report that is understandable. Excellent. So Kath's going to come up now and she's going to do double duty for you, both reporting as president and also reading the general manager's report from Jez.
Okay. I'm going to do my report first because Jez wears a lot of hats and she always wears a hat, so I'm going to put the hat on when I read hers so you guys don't get too confused. So hang tight. I put it on my phone to save a world and trees. Okay. Hello. I have been reflecting a lot on lately on the last 4 years that I've had the honor to serve on this board of directors. This hasn't been an ordinary term. From financial hardship, change in leadership, to COVID, we have had a bumpy road. What I am the most proud of is the simple fact that the co-op remains open, providing this essential service to the community. This is a huge feat, and I want to recognize the hardworking staff for wearing so many hats every day. A shout out to our co-managers, Jez and Stanzi. Stanzi just had a baby and is on maternity leave, so Jez has had a lot on her plate. And I wanted to, everybody just to kind of give them a shout out. Can we just give the staff a big round of applause? Thank you. Oh, and to my favorite board members in the whole world, thank you so much for your time and commitment, your brilliant ideas and talent, turning vision into a reality. I'm talking about grants, people. The USDA Rural Development Grant, thank you, Rose, for taking the lead on this. Yes. Immense gratitude to Mary Niebling and other volunteers like Susan Grimaldi and Bob Fancher who volunteered their time. This is not an Oscar speech, so I can't thank everyone, but if you were on one of these committees, could you just please raise your hand here because we want to give you a round of applause too. Thank you. All right, everybody. Sam Clark, I know you've been a world of help as well. Okay. So, oh, I'm sorry. How can I forget about the $19,000 grant that from VITA that our treasurer John wrote? It went right to operations, spent really quickly. It has been such a pleasure working with you all. You're just the best. As fiduciaries of the Plainfield Co-op, it is the board's duty to monitor the financial condition of the co-op. This involves overseeing overall margins and labor costs to keep our current store viable. Through the USDA grant, we were able to explore various options available that would create a thriving co-op rather than one that is just struggling to survive all the time. The struggle to remain viable is real for small rural co-ops in the nation. The Plainfield Co-op is a member of the Neighboring Food Cooperatives Association. We join Vermont members that include 11 food co-ops, are locally owned by over 50,000 people, like yourselves, employ 940 people, generate over $147 million in annual revenue, and sell more than $51 million in local products. Our co-op matters. But we can't be an economic alternative if we aren't around. Karen Ziebelman, a lobbyist representing co-ops, said, "Small is beautiful, but invisible is not." I want to remind folks that the future of the Plainfield Co-op is in your hands. No pressure. This is your decision. The board is presenting you with a culmination of our work over the past year, and together we will discuss the challenges and opportunities so you can make an informed decision when casting your ballot. Open and democratic membership is what the co-op is all about. Thank you, everyone, for your dedication and support. And have I told you lately that I love you? Thank you. Hang on, now I gotta do this. All right, Jess. short and sweet too. You guys are going to use your imagination, right? So Jez isn't feeling well. My fellow co-opians, the state of the union is strong. We have had a good year, slowly pulling the co-op out of debt accrued in the past several years. These things take time. Last fall, after the loss of sales due to the resurfacing of the bridge, the co-op went into debt to our vendors. I remember the day it passed the $100,000 threshold. Looking back historically, the co-op used to average owing about $50,000. We used to remain in terms with our vendors. I have always called the Plainfield Co-op the impossible store. We are small, tucked back, a little funky, and manage to sell healthy food without being pretentious. And we chug along, being pulled by our devoted members and hardworking staff. We are truly vulnerable and a big part of the local food web that Vermont is famous for. The store remains open to this day because we all love it. What has the improbable store managed to do in the past year? Besides chipping away at the debt accrued since the pandemic, we have rounded up over $5,000 and applied those funds to painting the gable end of the building. Years ago, it was estimated that it would cost $50,000 to paint the building, and this was seen as an impossible goal. Through everyone's pocket change, progress is being made. Thanks to Jason Mallory, who I'm sure you have seen up on the scaffolding, painting away patiently. Look for the installation of new windows soon. We all know that sales are declining, but we have adjusted our spending and managed to save a lot of money. For example, last year at this time, we had lost over $67,000. This year, our net income January through July is minus $6,671. We have showed a profit in the past 2 months, and August is looking good too. Most of this money was saved in labor. We have a small staff, and everyone wears many hats. As you know, we shifted the management into a team of 2. We no longer have a lead receiver. Instead, buyers and staff are responsible for their departments. It is okay to not always be growing. I know this statement goes against the tenets of capitalism, but there is something to be said for dialing a business in, growing more efficient, being less wasteful, and staying super local. I know the main subject of the annual meeting, at least for the past several years, has been whether to expand or to move, and a lot of doom and gloom regarding the location in the village proper. Here are some things to think about. Every village used to have a little store. When economies were smaller and more local, and people drove less, the store was the heart of the community. If the store were moved from the village, what will happen to our folks who live right across the street? Some of our shoppers live here without cars. Who's going to walk down Route 2 to grab fixins for breakfast? Who here wants to shop at the gas station? When there is climate chaos and Route 2 is closed, as it was mid-July, who wants to be stranded in a food desert? Whatever is decided today, I want to thank all of our members for keeping us open all these years, for believing in the improbable store, for not always driving past us and down Route 2 in search of cheaper groceries. Thank you for shopping local, supporting your farmers, and the thriving food economy of Vermont. That is from Jez. Thank you.
Thanks, Kat, and also for the impersonation. You can all judge how well Kat did on that. So we've got one more item before we get on to the Board of Electors, the vote for that, and also onto the discussion around the future of the co-op. So if Glenda's here, I want to come up and talk about the newsletter item. And I'll just mention that for members who aren't able to be here tonight, Leah's recording, so this will be on the website or wherever you've been posting that. So for folks who aren't able to be here tonight, they'll be able to hear your questions and your thoughts as we go through the evening. All right, Glenda, so you're our next item for the newsletter before we get on to any voting.
This will be short. It's not really a discussion. It's a couple of items from the newsletter committee. One is a reminder that our fall newsletter, with a deadline of September 15th, will include a feature on longtime co-op supporter, artist, horsewoman Randy, who passed recently, and we wanted to remember her. And I know lots of you have lots of memories and photos and things that we can publish in the newsletter, and if there are too many things, then we'll get them published in the news blast or some other way. But anyway, we really wanted to remember Randy, who did so much for our co-op. And her farm is now the farm of Hagen and Elise, who are supplying much produce to the co-op. So we owe all kinds of debt to beloved Randy. Second item, the newsletter committee is exploring various digital formats. A print copy of the newsletter now costs about $2, 20 pages, black and white. It also requires many hours of layout time. Thank you, Elizabeth, for all those hours. So we feel committed to having some version of the newsletter available for people who cannot receive it and read it online. And if we could have a show of hands of those people who cannot deal with a digital edition of the newsletter but need some kind of print version. Okay, of course, this is not the whole membership, but here we have 3 people anyway, and I'm sure there are more. We haven't decided on exactly what the format will be. If it was a blog format, Elizabeth would not have to spend the hours and hours doing layout. And of course, any digital edition does not have the printing costs that we've been incurring. We can also, with digital versions, have a shorter time between submission and publication. There are many advantages and there are disadvantages. I love the print newsletter, but it may be time to move on. So you'll hear more about that in the fall newsletter. And reminder that submissions are due the 15th of September, especially memories and photos of Randy. Thanks. And thank you for reading the newsletter. You know, it's amazing the number of people who actually open the newsletter when it's sent out on email. We are delighted. Thank you for reading and supporting us.
Thank you, Glenda, and the rest of the newsletter committee. You clearly do a fabulous job, and I think I need to read a copy just to see how good a job you're all doing. So we're getting into the formal part of the meeting today, where we'll be presenting the slate of new board members for you. And we just want to check that everybody who arrived had a chance to check in at the table, either with Kat or with Leah, because if you are a member in good standing, you should have a pink card, and that's what you'll be using to vote for this slate of new candidates who we'll be talking to you about. Is there anybody who does need to go up and see either Leah or Kat? Then please feel free to do that. So before, as you heard when the board members introduced themselves, you do have continuing board members, John Cleary, Claire Duma, and Anne Vancouvering. So thank you all for continuing. Okay, and there is one departing member, Kat, but I don't think the board members can let her leave without saying something. So I think, Rose, you're up for a couple of words here.
Kat, you have been so awesome to work with. This gal, she was on the board for 4 years. A full term is 3 years. So she went over and above. And when I first came on the board, it was just before COVID. And our chair at the time was delegated to be on the governor's pandemic response group. And Kat stepped in as chair. You know, it wasn't, she didn't sign up for that, but she agreed to it. And she's been chair ever since. And she does a great job, I gotta tell you. She keeps us on track. But the amazing thing to me is she's a working mom. She's got kids at home. She navigated a kid going to college this fall. And she's done all that being like the nicest person I know. Kat is just always cheerful and nice. So you've been so great to work with. I want to say thank you very much, Kat, on behalf of all the members. We have a little...
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I think I'm good. I think you guys are going to hear more from me, so I'll
All right, thank you, board members, for the appreciation. So there may now be a rush to join the board, as clearly it sounds like, you know, one of the most fun groups you could possibly be in town. But before that rush, here's the formal part of the evening. So there's a slate of 3 board members, Rose Paul, who is up for renewal, as she said at the start of the meeting. And I'm going to read you the bios of 2 new board members who are up for your vote today. There'll be a vote on the slate of 3. So once you've heard of the new potential board members, you'll have a chance to raise your card, and the board members who are currently active on the board will actually need to do a count. So when you raise it, just know that you'll need to hold that card up for a few minutes while they do the count. And of the 2, Kathleen and Walker, I think Walker was potentially going to be here tonight. No. Okay, so neither could make it, but we have fabulous bios of them, and I'm sure being a small town that some of you will know them. So the slate is Rose Paul, returning to the board. The first new candidate is Walker Blackwell. He grew up on a farm in Cabot, and he's been a customer of the Plainfield Co-op since the age of 1. He worked as a cook at the Hunger Mountain Co-op in his teens before moving out to Chicago, where he became a fine art printmaker, and later founded a non-profit community access lab called Latitude Chicago. Local, accessible, and sustainable food access has been a major part of his life, and serving on the board of the Plainfield Co-op, now that he's back here, is a way for him to stay involved in that world. So, that's the second candidate you have on your slate. The third candidate is Kathleen Sweltz, and her husband moved back to Plainfield last year, looking for a place to start a family, grow food, and raise animals. So 1 baby, a robust and weedy garden, and 30 chickens later, it seems like they have found it. Kathleen has worked in grocery stores, as a mental health provider for under-resourced youth, and as a farmer, seeing firsthand the impact that access or lack of access to high quality and affordable food has on a person's quality of life and happiness. She sees the co-op as a wonderful way to get local and healthy food to the community, and wants to play an active role in the co-op's mission. All right, so compliments to the board for their recruitment. As you can see, this is the hot property. This is the committee you want to be on. So we'd now like to call for a formal vote. Those who are in favor of approving this slate of 3 officers for your board members, please raise your pink cards. And the current board members are going to do a count. Great. That's fine, because the cards aren't needed for the second vote. So this is great. So Kat can't leave you without doing one last phenomenal effort and counting the number of cards. So as you all know, you voted on your bylaws last year, and a quorum is required of active members for this vote on the slate of new board members. So with that, 31.75 of you were required today to be here to vote. So the board wisely rounded that number up to 32. And so provided there are 32 members who vote and that overall there is an approval, we will have new board members for Plainfield Co-op. Kat, I feel like this is becoming a bit of a game show. We have one out in far right field and we have 3 on the front row here.
Wait, all the way out there?
I think you could just add 1 when you count up. Excellent. Yeah, let's take a question while the final count is in. Great, thank you. So in the bylaws, now this is by memory, you have to have a minimum of 5. Great. Now board members, this is like a pop quiz for the board members. What is the maximum number of board members you can have? Okay, I think we're at 7. So the answer is somewhere between 5 and 7. So you have 3 members continuing, and you have 3 members who are being voted on. So you're in that sweet spot right now. Excellent, thank you for that question. And so, Kat, how many votes did we have cast? Yes, we have 38. Excellent. So, welcome to your new board members, and Rose, continue. So, that is correct. So, of the total, okay, so now we have the total voting, the total active members who are eligible for voting this evening. And so do we have that total number from the count that came in? Kat's been counting who came in as well. Yes. So we have 38 votes yes in favor. So now, this is real time. You know, this is not quite the much excitement normally on election night. So with that, because everybody who's an active member has to be checked in just to make sure, friends and family are always welcome but can't vote. So when we know the exact tally of how many are here, we'll know those who declined to vote for this slate of new board members proposed. Great, excellent. Thank you, John. All right then, so now we're going to get, if you like, to the heart of the meeting, which is a discussion of the future of the co-op. And see a number of faces who've been to the informational meetings. Hopefully you've read all the information that's been out on email. The board has done a fabulous job of putting things out on Facebook and getting as much attention as possible. So what's going to happen is we're going to have Kat and Rose and John all give you a short summary of the information that has been provided, and we'll then have a presentation from Anne about how voting will occur, and then we're going to open it up for any and all questions that you would all like to ask. Okay? So John's going to start off, and he's going to give you a summary of the background, how you as the co-op membership got to this point.
And we're going to try to be quick because we do want time for discussion here. And I think, we've had several community meetings. There's been information shared through newsletters and emails. So we don't want to repeat too much, but I'll give a little background. You heard through my financial report, part of that was just sort of the short version of why we're concerned. There's a longer history to this that the co-op has had tough financial times for a number of years, but it has survived all these years as well. So there's this perseverance and sort of DIY nature of our business that we don't want to discount. But I would say there's a genuine concern both from members and from the board about the long-term future of the business if we don't make some significant changes. In order to evaluate these changes, we received a grant, applied for and received a grant, as most of you know, to hire some consultants, put together committees from members, board members, and consultants to do a number of things. First, to do a market study, which we had done in 2018. We updated that study to look at who are our shoppers, demographics, who are the people that live in this area, what is what they call the trade area that we operate in, where else do they shop, what is our competition, what are things that limit our sales, at least as far as these consultants can see, and get a sense of what are our opportunities, either at our current location for the future or at other locations in the future. So that built some information that we fed into the next stage of the grant, which was to do a financial analysis of some of these different options. The options being stay as we are in the building without any major changes. Second option was to stay but expand, renovate and expand the building. Third option, because it was available, was to look at moving to Route 2 and buying the horse farm and building a brand new building. Fourth option was to look at buying Plainfield hardware and moving operations from the village to that location and running it both as hardware and grocery. So that was a good range. It's important to know that these consultants, they only had the information that we've provided them to plug into these models. They built some wonderful models for us that we may change going forward. Models based where we can change sales or financing options. They gave us some great tools that we can use regardless of what direction that we go. But they built it off of our history. And there are some that say, well, just because we've struggled in our current location in the past doesn't mean that we couldn't change things and find a successful path there. But others say, well, the primary things limiting our current location are the actual location and limited parking and difficulty in having people find us. We did find through the market study that they estimate our sales could probably double on a Route 2 location compared to being in the village, whether that was building a new building or at Plainfield Hardware. It's no surprise for you all to know that they told us we can't afford to build a brand new building. That just makes sense. But I'll let the other board members discuss the various options that were laid out, and then we'll have time to discuss them.
All right, so Kat's going to quickly tell you about two options, one which was a stay in place and one the horse farm.
Okay. So I'm going first because these two options are the least viable. Stay in place and continue with the status quo. This option requires no capital, but finds us depleting all of our cash reserves by 2027. A huge factor in this is the projected bridge closure that would cut the village off from suppliers and customers for 6 months or longer. We could lose upwards of $182,000 in sales, according to our updated marketing study. The author calculated the losses by using the bridge closure data from October of last year. By 2026, due to our reliance on our cash reserves for sustaining operation, the co-op will be insolvent. The board does not recommend this option. The other option we looked at was purchasing Allenwood Stables in Plainfield Village and building a store from scratch. The feasibility study ran several financial scenarios, including fundraising, but we would still have to take on debt for construction and the responsibility of running a horse farm. The study showed we couldn't make up enough sales to cover the debt service. This option was not deemed financially feasible, and therefore the board does not recommend this option.
Thanks, Kat. So Anne's going to talk to you now about the option to stay in place and expand.
So quite a bit was done on this. We found a couple of architects who made some nice plans. They're on the website. That their expansion included updating the store, modernizing the electric, and all the stuff. All the deferred maintenance is also part of their expansion plans.
The second floor we are not required to have an elevator, but we are required to make the stairs more accessible and have 2 sets of them. And we are, an elevator is an option, and there may be ADA funds for that. But all in all, their thing was that it was going to be about a $1.44 million project without the elevator, and that includes all the permitting, all the this and that's around that. And it would be financially feasible to do this if we can fundraise and get grants for all of these costs. If we have to take out a loan, less feasible. So, and that was going ahead with the current business model, with the only adjustment being a sort of deli with grab-and-go food, not necessarily pay to order, although that was considered, but that was not part of the monies that they figured into it. So there might be room, but that financial feasibility study wasn't done. And so that's the story about the expand in place. It's possible, but there's a lot of fundraising involved.
Thank you, Anne. And Rose is going to tell you about the 4th option with Plainfield Hardware.
So, most of you probably know by now that the Plainfield hardware store has been for sale for a year. The present owners simply want to retire. They're ready to retire. They're co-op members, and they would love to see the co-op buy that store. For the co-op to buy the hardware store, it is the most profitable scenario of all the ones that were considered. We would make money there. We could afford the debt service on a loan there. We would keep the hardware side of the business. We would have a mix of co-op food as well as what our consultants call clean conventional food. So think of how a Buffalo Mountain co-op in Hardwick has changed. We would look kind of like that mix of food. And then also we would keep the seasonal greenhouse. So the question that always comes up is, what do we know about running a hardware store? Well, in the financial analysis that was done, we would be able to keep staffs of both businesses, the co-op and the hardware store. We would be able to afford that and capture the expertise of the folks that have been running the hardware store. It's probably a little staff heavy, but it's built into our financial model that over 2 years' time, we could right size by attrition. And both stores have some attrition as a normal course of things. As consultants pointed out in the market study and in the final report, which you can see on the website, the visibility of being on Route 2 is really important to the profitability of our business. The ability to have easy parking, the one floor for everything, for one-stop stopping. We would be able to blend customer bases. I think there's probably some people that shop at the hardware store that don't ever come into the co-op, but they're likely going to get some milk and some bread and start getting used to buying a few things at our co-op located there when they're getting their hardware. Gradually, I think we'll be able to combine customer bases and really expand the co-op's customer base. And I'll conclude by saying our financial analyses looked at cash on hand at the end of every year for 10 years' time. And the cash on hand continues to build in the scenario where we relocate to the hardware store and we can afford the debt service on the store. So That's all.
Well, thank you all the board members for that summary and all of you for paying attention and really understanding what the options are. Before we take questions, Anne's going to cover one other very important piece for you, which is the actual vote, the ballot that you'll have a chance to respond to, starting today through until Tuesday the 4th. So Anne, you're going to explain all of those important details.
So we were going to put a couple of items like, do you want to do this, do you want to do that, until somebody pointed out that we need a 2/3 vote for any kind of real estate. And if we did you have choice A, B, C, or D, we were probably not going to get 2/3 of anything. So we have phrased this as, do you want to move to Plainfield Hardware or not? And the or not means staying in place and exploring other options, perhaps other business models, expanding, so it's not voting on whether we're going to do all that. It's whether or not you think it's a good idea for us to investigate further moving forward on the Plainfield Hardware, and if we decide that it is a good financial decision, that we should go ahead with financing. So this is what the vote is. And that's why it's a yes/no vote. If we don't get 2/3 and we have a no, that means that we are committed to staying in place and looking at alternative models there. It isn't keep doing the same thing. We've already determined that won't work. So that we have decided, because it's such an important vote, that we're going to keep it open for 10 days, 2 weeks, until the Tuesday after Labor Day, which is the 5th. At the end of the day, there'll be a ballot box, which is this white thing at the co-op. You can put your votes in there wherever. We are sending out also email things that people can print out. There will be ballots at the hardware store. Well, that was a slip. There'll be ballots at the co-op, and the only thing that we need is that you put your member number on there, because that's how we're keeping track of who's voted. So if you don't put your number on there, it won't be counted. We have all the numbers at the store. There are a couple people here who had some questions about their membership is just a bookkeeping thing. They go down to the store, they can be updated, they can vote there so they won't miss out. So my apologies that bookkeeping wasn't up to date. But anyway, so it's really a yes or no vote whether or not we should move forward with this if it proves to be financially feasible, with moving forward to trying to acquire the Plainfield Hardware store.
All right, excellent. So we're going to start with questions. So I'm looking at hands. I'll go to Peter and Claire. I'll then go to Glenda, the lady in purple, and then over here to this gentleman. So this will not stretch too far. So you have two options. If you want to come up and speak in the microphone, or I can repeat your question to make sure everybody is heard.
I can project.
You can. That's fabulous, Peter. Go for it.
Is there specific language? Could you read the specific language?
They're over there, Anne. So yeah, they're here available in printed on green paper.
I'll pass it out to you.
Okay. Given that the current operations of the co-op are not sustainable per extensive financial analysis, the co-op board is considering several options. One of these options is the purchase of Plainfield Hardware. All real estate decisions require a 2/3 majority, so this is being phrased as a yes/no vote. The wording is, I authorize the Plainfield Co-op Board to explore financing and purchasing options for the Plainfield Hardware store, with the intent of moving the operations of the co-op to that location, maintaining the hardware store, and expanding the grocery sales. If a purchase of that location is financially feasible, I authorize the board to move forward with the purchase and incur the associated costs. There is then a yes or no place at the bottom of the ballot. And with that, you also affirm that you're a member in good standing of the Plainfield Co-op and are current with your dues. You then sign and print your name and a member number either which is available on a list that Kat and Leah have tonight, or when you're actually at the co-op as well, when you check in there. Peter, thank you for that question. Claire, I think you were next with your question? No, that's great. So the lady in purple, and then we'll come to Glenda.
So, just to be clear, the two-thirds is two-thirds of people voting, not two-thirds of all members.
Correct, yes. That's a clarification. So of everybody who casts a vote, voting either yes or no, two-thirds of those votes cast would need to be a yes for this option to be pursued. Okay. Gentleman there, and then the lady in the lovely purple hat. Oh, sorry. Okay, we'll catch the three of you. Okay.
Want to make sure that you're not going to vote again after you look further in.
Excellent. So yes, the request there was a confirmation that this is the one vote on moving ahead with the Plainfield hardware option. And that is correct. And what it also says, though, with the wording, if a purchase is financially feasible, it also means that the board will take appropriate decisions to pursue this and will not pursue it at all costs if there are any issues that arise around its financial feasibility down the road. So this is the one vote. Yes.
One is that in the explanation here, it talks about the funding plan, and one of the things that member loan is $1 million. So I'm just wondering what that's about. And my second question is, if this goes through, what happens to the current building of the community?
Excellent, thank you. Two great questions. So the first one is about what's that $1 million member loan figure? What does that entail? And if this goes ahead, what happens to the current location? So Rose or John, do you want to start off with the financial question?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, the co-op, sorry, the hardware store is for sale for $1.5 million. The reason the total project cost is listed so high there is that the consultants really built in all the things that might be required to get there, including hiring a project manager to lead us through this, and various experts there. Cost of stocking new inventory, cost of any equipment repairs, so it's really they started with a all-in type of cost, and they built a model with a number of financing options. The financing options are not set yet. They proposed several options and said, we feel that these are realistic options, this much bank debt at a business interest rate loan, this much from member loans, this much from grants. And they said, given what we see as feasible financing options, we think you could afford this. But the next step would be for us to develop a very specific business plan with more specific financing options that we would then act on. And so the amount that would be raised through member loans really is yet undetermined until the actual project was fully fleshed out. The feasibility study said, yes, we think you could do this. The model we looked at in terms of member loans was what Buffalo Mountain and Hardwick did, where they approached their members and said, here's a loan structure that we are proposing that meets Vermont state law legal requirements that, for example, would you loan us to an individual member certain amount, say $5,000 with a 3% return over 5 to 7 years. The point of member loans being that likely you would get, the whole point would be to get lower interest rates than commercial banks would provide. Also, banks look at, because we're a cooperative, equity that we have in the business, including member loans, banks see that as equity. We know we have to pay you all back, but as owners of the business, you all are all owners of the business. If we all invest in this project, the bank, there's less that they have to secure. They're saying, okay, the owner is putting some of their own money into this project. So sometimes that helps with financing. So that's not a very specific answer, but that's sort of the structure that we have. Yeah, Rose is saying that this current project, we did not include grant money for the hardware store, though we did meet with a number of state agency people who assured us they think there are grants that are available. And there's some complexities there with it. There's some immediate grants available to help with the next steps. There's what they call the ready loans, the $7,500 that they could turn over to us tomorrow to hire the initial development consultant, these kinds of things. But then there are some economic development loans. One thing the board has considered for any of these options is the question of nonprofit ownership of buildings and the grants that are then available to that if we pursue that structure, which I won't go further with now, but that's something we've been exploring.
And I have two things. One is what happens to the building. It is not included in the initial cost that we would sell that building. There's 2 years before it would go up for sale. There's various ideas. And none of this has been fleshed out. There are some people promoting a satellite thing. I'm working with some other people in town on something called the Plainfield Area Community Trust, making a nonprofit. Some talk about maybe that nonprofit would be able to buy that building and then lease it to the most deserving community group with the best business plan. So that would be through a model done with the Vermont Preservation Trust. So and there's a lot of room for a lot of ideas. So that hasn't been, it's not required to sell that building to go forward with the Plainfield hardware thing. A lot of the grants that are available for us for the Plainfield hardware, like the initial consultant thing, would also be available if we stayed in place and decided to make different decisions about the in-place thing. So that's not dependent on where they are. Second thing is, if you don't know your member number, we'll be set up afterwards, and you can come over and ask us. Okay. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Anne. Next question.
This is less a question than a comment. The lady in the purple hat touched on it. The building is owned by the co-op. It remains an asset. The possibilities of what we could do with that asset are very exciting for me. I heard in previous rec field informational meeting the possibility of housing. Plainfield could certainly use some additional housing, of continuing to use that space as a community center and a satellite delivery place so people who cannot walk to or drive to the hardware store could still pick up their groceries there with a little van or something running the supplies that they order. I really appreciate that it's an asset. It could still be a community center. It could still add to the spirit of the heart of the village.
Great, thank you. Next question.
Okay, so in listening to the recordings of the informational meetings, one of the things that stuck out was that a lot of this decision hinges on the. You want to come up? Can you hear me?
Can everybody hear Paula okay?
I'm getting up.
Come on up.
It sounded like in the informational meeting recordings, what this big selling point is, or the important piece is, that the bridge closure will put the co-op under. That's what I heard as a pretty major factor in this decision. Pardon me? Okay. she said something I couldn't hear. Anyway, so I heard that. So I thought I heard 2026 for the bridge closure, and I thought I heard 2028 for the bridge closure. When is the bridge closure?
All right. Yeah. So maybe does one of the board members who knows most about that option just want to clarify what the bridge closure, the timing of it, and what the expected impact would be?
So the bridge closure is currently slated for 2028. With the current store going as is, that would be the death knell, according to the projected futures, compared to what happened last time. It was closed for a month, and the other time it was shut down just partially. The expansion was still, if we expanded and expanded retail space in place, and got that financed through grants and loans, member loans, that was not going to take it down. So it would still be viable if we did the expansion, and that might be the 6 months we decide to do the expansion. Who knows if we decide to go that way.
So Andy has a question, and then Sarah, and then if anybody else has questions or comments you want to share, great, I'll be looking for your hands there.
Two ifs for the group. If the membership votes to purchase Plainfield hardware, and if the board decides to go out to the membership for loans for part of the financing for that, how many of you who are members would consider loaning money to the co-op for that purpose? Show of hands. Yeah, understand that the terms are unclear and this is a very hypothetical, but okay. So that gives you guys a little bit of information on that.
Sarah?
Thanks, Emily. Hi, everybody. I'm just listening to the variable of the bridge closure and how that seems to be this big tipper thing, how it's presented to us. However, it's one point in time, and it'll be over, and then we'll be stuck with whatever we decide for the rest of our lives, or the rest of the life of the co-op. So it seems kind of tricky to have this one thing be what's going to be so decisive. This makes me feel sort of strange. And we don't know whether in 2028 VTrans will figure out an alternative bridge, a temporary bridge. We don't know that.
Thank you, Sarah. Any additional information from the board, or shall we go to the next question? Okay, great. Hang on, so we'll go to the lady in the hat, and then we'll come to you.
Hi, I just want to thank everybody on all the work with I want to thank the board for all the work on the grant and the study. I think that it looks like that's, in many ways, moving to the hardware is our best option. But I guess I'm saying I'm not ready to vote for it. I think it's taking a big risk. I feel like we're an old co-op, and we're actually old members. I don't know how many, but I'm guessing there are a lot of people out in our audience here that are at least my age. We're almost. And I think we have less energy and less financial ability to support, to come up with $1 million or about that in membership loans. I also worry that we don't have the kind of management we need to really run this kind of a business. We don't have a track record for that. The board and the management we've had in the past hasn't acted as I feel like they needed to when we were facing a shortfall, which I don't know where that shortfall is now, but we lost $60,000 last year. Did we somehow clear that? Have we paid that off? I mean, I know various growers who are still out, local people who sell at the co-op or who haven't been paid in the last 30 days. So anyway, those are my concerns. I don't feel like we're financially in a good position, and we have the management skills, but I do appreciate having the opportunity. One more thing is having spoken with someone else who has spoken with the state this week. They have our bridge slated, and this was talking to the bridge representative for the town of Plainfield, or the intersection, it's really called. That it's slated on the state, docket to be done 2027 and 2028. I'm hoping that between those two times, over the winter, we can cross the bridge. Hopefully the project will be moved forward enough so that during the winter time, at least we can get in and out. But I think there's a huge percentage of us here who, when that bridge is closed, no matter, if the Plainfield Co-op's up on Route 2, we won't be shopping there. I mean, it takes me 8 miles or something to get around to that area from the village. So there's a lot of us who are on the south side of Route 2 who won't be going there because it's out of the way. I mean, if I get that far, I might as well just keep going to Montpelier. I don't want to be, I want to support the co-op, but I probably won't go all around just to get oil or whatever. It's going to be a different kind of shopping. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Great. So, yes, lady there, and I'll come then to you, Glenda, and I saw a hand over here. No? Okay.
Given what Ann just said about the build-out possibly being scheduled for the time of the closure, and the fact that if we move to that option with a build-out, that we might not die in the time of the bridge closure, it feels to me like that option hasn't really been fully expressed and explored for our benefit as much as maybe the purchase of the hardware store has been.
Great. So Anne's going to come up as a question about the expansion and the timing of the bridge, how those intersect.
Well, and also what I heard from that was what are we going to do with it if we expand it? And the reason that it wasn't fleshed out more, and that was conscious on our part, is because what it looks like when we expand, we haven't done that work. We haven't talked to consultants. We haven't, we haven't explored that. We've had an architectural plan, and we've had a future based on 660 more square feet of retail space with the same model. I don't think that would be our ultimate choice. So but that's what we have the financial figures for, that and a little bit of grab and go. So that's what our financial consultants looked at as our model, and there may be more room for change in there, but that's not what we're voting on today because it hasn't been explored. Does that make sense? I hope. We're just trying not to say we know what's going to happen there because we don't.
And part of the problem about knowing exactly what would happen with the expansion is, the feasibility study basically said you cannot afford to do the expansion if you have to pay for it, because you're still going to be stuck with same off main route type location, limited parking, difficult access. But they're saying if you can get free money to do it, then, well, you probably could continue to be in that spot. And it would be a better building, and you could assume that would help sales. But so that the uncertainty of could you really do an expansion without spending your own money on it is part of the limiting factor about being able to decide to pursue that, or for us to know exactly what that would look like. So that's one bit of information there.
I had another question from the gentleman there, and then another question over here.
Hi, everyone. I've been involved in the community center for more than 40 years at this point. And I don't really see how this has entered creatively into this discussion at the moment. I have seen that the community center has been devoted to non-commodified art and meetings that are beyond our ability to put a price tag on them. I'm the one who has put up the last couple of shows that are up there now. I have also participated in many other shows, performance events, etc. And I know many of the artists who have performed there in the past, all of whom are very socially minded artists. So I think of the community center as a place that is the life and soul of the ethic of Plainfield. It's part of the reason why I have loved being here so much. So I have an idea that I'd like to put out that might be able to help us to free the community center from a discussion in which it's being evaluated as a monetary entity when that is not what it has really been used for all these years. I am thinking that since the Grange, it was originally a Grange when it was turned over to the co-op, why can't it be turned back to the town as a Grange, following in the historic way that it was originally created, and then use the historic preservation issue as a way to build a bridge again between the town office and the co-op, restore that bridge using historic preservation funds, and have it continue to be a free resource as it has been all these years by the use of that historic perspective. So I just wanted to put that idea out also today. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So we're going to go to Glenda's question. Also, then our next question is actually queued up here. So if anybody prefers, come here and come and speak in the microphone, that would be a fabulous option. And I'll also continue to call on those who raise hands here as well. Glenda, your question.
This is really a comment and kind of a response to some of Betsy's concerns. My original thought about the hardware store was, no, that is not the co-op. And then I thought, we're just getting in over our heads. How can we manage all of this? How can the board know enough to oversee that big an operation? And I have asked the board a lot of questions, and I feel very reassured by the answers that they have included in the budget money for a professional manager for that hardware store co-op, that there are consultants who know things that we don't know that can be extremely helpful in expanding this undertaking, which I think looks very daunting, but to know that there are people available who have experience who can help us, I find very reassuring. And my original sort of dismay at the thought of the hardware store being the whole of the co-op has changed radically, and I now see it as kind of a coming together of the community. All the folks that go to the hardware store, and we're also buying out one of our competitors, which is the grocery section at the hardware store. Anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenda.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that I'm also one of those old members. I don't know if I'm as old as some of you, but I've been around here for a while. And I appreciate the concerns about the risks involved. I just wanted to remind folks that there's also risks involved with not moving forward that have been, I think, very well described and illustrated by our board members and their long and extensive research. And I think it bodes well to follow their advice. And I don't know, was I the first one? I've already voted, and I voted yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking for other questions, comments, other hands raised. Excellent, Kat. That's great. Let's have that, and then Lucy will come to you for your question.
This is from Deborah Stolaroff. She was at our first community forum that was right here. And she said, unfortunately, the co-op annual meeting overlaps with the 90th birthday party. Okay, so she's mega raging and won't be there today. But she said that she wanted to just reiterate her comments. I made that, okay, let me just read this whole darn thing. Rose mentioned that other members liked the comments I made that favored moving to the hardware store. I want you to feel free to use those comments, because I am, if it is helpful during the annual meeting. In addition, one other thought I had since the meeting I attended at the rec field is that we could keep our current building as a smaller but connected storefront, which would sell basics so people in the village could still walk to the store for necessities. As well, the community center could stay in place. The community center, did I say that? Could stay in place. Just a thought. I hope the annual meeting goes well. So Deborah has what I call the, have your cake and eat it too thing, like kind of wanting to do it all. So I just really wanted to share that because she couldn't be here.
Lucy Blue here. This is just a thought that with the option of expanding in place, that I wonder just how much it would actually expand, because once you do the, whatever it is, ADA regulations to widen the aisles for wheelchairs, say, then that means, I think, that reduces the space, even though some space would be added. Some space would be added, but it would also necessitate reducing some space. I'm just mentioning that.
Thank you, Lucy. Anne, comment?
The answer to that is 660 square feet. They did do that math. So there was 660 additional square feet of retail space, even with the ADA changes. I want everybody who's thinking about keeping the building and whatever to realize that we still have to maintain and pay for that building, which has not been maintained. So somehow that budget has to happen if we keep it. So just don't forget that building has stuff that it costs money to keep it open.
Thank you, Anne. So, more questions and comments. One more. Dear John.
I have a question about the horse farm. Not to get everyone crazy, but has there been any thought about if we bought that and sold parcels of land off? It cannot be divided. Okay, that's a good one. I think it would be nice, though, in this vote, if there was at least a mention of the building that we have and what we're going to do with that. I think would help a lot of voters and maybe a lot of the people that aren't here that should be here
and vote would have some idea that we had thought about that. It seems like it's left off the side a little bit.
You know, one thing I could say about the building, you know, Anne mentioned working with the Preservation Trust of Vermont, and the idea of creating a nonprofit that can then get grants for historic preservation. And this is a model that Preservation Trust is working with many towns on fairly successfully. And if you've seen the East Calais General Store project and the money they got to, you know, $2.5 million to renovate and reopen that, the key thing behind that was the fact of it being owned by a nonprofit, which our cooperative is not considered a nonprofit. So I'll give you my vision. In general, the board has tried to stay open to all ideas to hear from members, but here we are at the end, so I'll tell you what I could envision. I would love to see us move to the hardware store. In part, we could say, hey, we're going to save the hardware store. What might happen to it if, you know, Max Market or someone else buys it and it might turn into something else? Move to the hardware store, turn it into an amazing cooperative destination for local foods and hardware and practical things. Sell the building to the Plainfield Community Trust, who as a nonprofit gets grants to renovate it and turn it into a community space that meets the needs of the members, which could take a variety of shapes and forms. But that's my envisioning of what might happen to that building.
I just think it would be nice if it was in part of this vote. If we can't vote on that. I'm just saying, I think that the members that are listening to what we're doing here, we should have some indicator of what we're going to do with this building, if we could.
Which is great idea. I mean, I think that we've all talked about it, and I think that we can't know just yet. We've had 3 or 4 ideas here already. We have a possible nonprofit that is just forming that could buy it. We could keep it. We could redonate it to the town. There will be a vote on it, but we don't know. And I think that it's just tricky. And there's only so many things, you know, as I said, we scared this. Do we want to pursue moving? Because we have to get a 2/3 vote for that. If we don't get a 2/3 vote, if we do get a 2/3 vote for it, we'll come back and ask about the building. You know, it's not like this is the last time you get to choose. But, you know, since we're now talking about what we would prefer, I'd prefer to stay and expand in place. And I love having the co-op downtown. I think it's really a vital part of a village. If we're trying to make this not a bedroom community, to have stores in town is vital. And I think we could make it work, and I think it could be beautiful. I just think it needs a radical re-envisioning. So that's my personal opinion. I'm happy to work with whatever the members want.
So, are there any more questions or comments from the members? And then I'll come back to the board for any last comments that anybody hasn't. Great.
I just want to say that the Plainfield Area Community Trust is in process. One of the first project, I think the whole group of people who are involved with this sees that's out there for us to begin work on is possibly the co-op building. And how for us to purchase, for an organization like this might be, to purchase it would hopefully not be a lot of money, but the money it would need to be used, the money to acquire the money needed to renovate it would be our effort through grants and fundraising. And we are an organization that's a nonprofit is much more eligible to receive grant money. At this point, Preservation Trust has said they will not loan money to the Plainfield Co-op. They said we're not financially stable. So at this point, we're not eligible for those monies. Maybe things might change, but that they have a small amount of money that's available for
businesses that are not nonprofits, which is what the co-op is. But they have more money available for nonprofits. I would love to see that happen. I would love the co-op.
Becky, do you want to come up?
Hi, I just want to say thank you to the board for putting in so much work. I can understand that it's not just the regular running of the co-op, but at this point there is so much to think about and research and work on. And so thank you. Thank you to the new people as well.
This is very short. I'm just wondering, one of the things we're voting says if a purchase of that location is financially feasible, I authorize the board to blah, blah. What is the measure of financial feasibility, and who is doing that?
Well, I don't think this is a complete answer, Becky, but off the top of my head, to start with, we haven't done a negotiation for price with the hardware store owners. So, can we talk them down? Can we negotiate them down? That would be my hope. But, you know, these kind of things start with a negotiation. We have to find out whether we can get a bank loan. Would our friend Vikas or someone like that loan to us? Would our members invest in us with member loans? Can we get a pile of grants? I mean, that's what I'm gunning for. That's why I'm signing up for a second term on the board. I'll write grant applications like a beaver. You know, I'll work on that. I'm motivated. So these kinds of this is all in the flux that's going to go on for a few months, figuring out what is feasible. If we get no grants, if we get rejected by a bank loan, you know, that's it. It's over.
Thank you. So one more question from Paula, then I'm going to be scanning the crowd if anybody else got any questions or comments. And then we'll actually do a reminder of the voting and a couple of other items before we close.
Can you tell us about the follow-up to the vote? So, vote goes yes, what happens? Vote goes no, what happens? Can we have another general meeting somewhere before a year from now? From that?
Yeah, immediate steps would be a ballot committee will count the votes, including verifying, you know, that the votes were all from active members, and there'll be a fair process to come up with that. And then we will immediately communicate the results to the members, probably via an e-blast and general communications. And then really, next steps, you know, the board would then meet to decide next steps. But it goes to this feasibility question. If it is a yes for Plainfield Hardware, we would need to do the rest of the business plan. So we did this 10-year financial pro forma. We did a market study. Those are the core pieces that will feed into a business plan. But a business plan talks specifically about timelines, financing, who is going to do what. It's going to work to mitigate risk so that the whether it's owner financed, which is one possibility through the hardware, or bank financed, or most likely it would be a combination of financing sources. All of those people want to know that risk is being mitigated for them and that this is a smart option. And the board and you all as members, we need to, you know, finish that business plan to know that we are taking the right step. So I think next steps would be this, to the Regional Planning Commission, these READY grants, the $7,500 that they've said it's available as soon as you know what you're going to do. That would be the first thing to then, you know, hire a development consultant that would work on business plan and finding more money to take those next steps. So it is going to be a process, one way or the other. That's going to take a little time. Let's say the vote is no, then the board will continue to have meetings and talk about how do we improve current operations, and how do we, engage membership in those decisions as well.
So Peter, and then over here again.
I just wanted to follow up on the what happens to the current building. It is, if we were to give it to the Plainfield Trust or whatever, that is a real estate decision, and it would come back to the membership for a 2/3 vote. So whatever happens to that building, it's our building. So it would come to us to decide. So I would just clarify that.
Thank you, Peter. And Stephen has one more comment.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that I'm not sure if it's a Hanover Co-op or Lebanon, but one of them has a gas station, and they have their own garage where you can take your automobile to be serviced. So the idea of a cooperatively owned, not just grocery store, but a cooperatively owned hardware store is something that I find kind of an exciting prospect. But I'm also thinking that there's a fair amount of space around that building where there might be room for something like a cooperatively owned electric car charging station or something of that. And so I'll convert this comment into a question. I realize you all have had plenty to talk about and plenty to work on, so maybe you haven't explored this too much, but can you speak to what other possibilities there are at the Plainfield hardware location, such as how many acres and what could you do with it? Thank you.
And we've been told that the supplier, the wholesale supplier of Plainfield Hardware, is itself a co-op. So interesting things to explore there. Okay, I forget the exact acreage, but it's something like 4 acres of land around Plainfield Hardware. And the board did a site visit. We looked into every nook and cranny last summer and asked the owners about soils, the arable soils. There's actually really good soils there. And one of our first thoughts was, geez, could we have some community gardens? We took another site visit with some state economic development folks and Mark Mahaly, our state representative, a couple of weeks ago. We did a little quiet tour there, and they were all looking in, the greenhouse is empty right now until like Christmas trees and wreaths come in, and they're all going, that's a lot of space. You could do some cool things with that space. So, let's get creative. Let's think about that. And then lastly, I'll just say someone who took a strong interest for a while drew up some simple computer drawings for us and showed how we could add on to the building. I mean, this is not year one, folks, but his idea was you could have a beer garden out there. But surely we can have solar panels on the roof. We can move gradually to converting some of the systems, to zero, as close to zero carbon as we can get. And Efficiency Vermont has grants for businesses to do conversions like that. So that just, I love the idea of that.
Excellent. So for those of you who might be wondering what's next, we want to see if there's any more questions before we close. But then I want to let you know that the raffle ticket in your hand, there is a chocolate pecan bourbon pie up here, and there's a gift certificate. So that's coming before when we close the meeting. But let's just see. Aha, okay. Okay, great. So here's what's going to happen. Anne's going to make sure that everybody gets a raffle ticket. And I think Kat's going to secure then the second version of the raffle ticket to do the drawing. Okay, great. So this is going on in the background. Wave either of them down. But let's not have this excitement over chocolate bourbon pecan pie derail any further questions or comments that anybody has. So I'm looking for any other hands raised or anything like that. Would anybody else have a one last two questions for the board? So, I'm not sure if the hands raised, Glenda, are you after raffle tickets or pie? Okay, great. So, if there are no further questions, great, excellent. We do have one last comment.
Hi, y'all. I've been to a bunch of these meetings over the years when Manuel's was for sale, the Red Store was for sale, Maple Valley was for sale, Tim's. We've had a lot of opportunities, so I'm going to vote yes.
All right, thank you. So, thank you to all of the members for your attention, for your thoughtful questions, for your fabulous comments, and passing on the thanks as well to the board members for all of their incredibly hard work. So the board members, a couple of them can stay around if you do have any further questions. But we are getting to the official closing of this, your annual meeting, and the last excitement is going to be the drawing of the raffle. And so while those final administrative details are being taken care of, as you've noticed, a number of people have come up and cast their ballots. If you want to do that tonight, I think Kat's collecting in the second tickets. So if you want to cast your ballot tonight, that you can. There are some ballot slips up here on the green paper, and the ballot box is the white box behind here. You can also cast your ballots at the co-op through until the end of business on Tuesday, the 4th of September. The 5th of September, thank you. Tuesday, the 5th of September. So definitely, tell all your neighbors and friends who are members of the co-op, who should be, that they've still got a few days to vote on this important question. All right. Yes. If you become a member in good standing before the close of business on Tuesday, the 5th of September, then you can vote.
I think that our member equity is $20 a year. So if you've never joined the co-op in any way, it's only going to cost you $20 for this year, and it gets you a vote.
Excellent. So there's been a question as well about member numbers here. So there is a list here that Kat and others have. If you want to check your member tonight, great, it's on the table over there. And also when you go to the co-op, they can obviously look up your member number as well. So now, before the excitement builds to, a really nervous point, I'm going to see if we're ready to do the drawing for the raffle. How are we doing? Okay. So then. All right, so I think, Kat, you get to pick. Is it the first one, the pie?
Pie.
Hang on.
Wow. Okay. Who wants to pull it out?
Okay, so Anne's picking, and this is for the pie. This is for chocolate pecan bourbon pie, whoever's going home with that tonight.
512-1719.
Wonderful. So I think the co-op's latest new member is going home with a pie.
Congratulations.
Excellent. And then the gift certificate.
Okay. This is a $10 gift certificate at the co-op.
Number 512-1703.
Oh, you're kidding me! Yay!
Yes, you
Congratulations! That's awesome! All right.
So the membership list, just as you are leaving, maybe you can bring the membership lists up here. Great, that's all right. Membership list here, the ballot, the voting box. And I think, board members, is there anything else before we conclude the meeting tonight? One last thing. Thank you, Emily Bodecker. You are an awesome facilitator. Thank you, everybody. And now counting this music laid on as well. It's happening in Plainfield.